More than 1,000 children sexually abused by hundreds of Catholic priests over the span of decades in the state of Pennsylvania, according to a grand jury report. Abuse that was largely covered up. One of those who was abused, Mark Rossi, who's a Democratic state representative in Pennsylvania, and has introduced a bill that would eliminate the statute of limitations for victims of childhood sexual abuse. Sir, we appreciate you taking the time for us today. You are part of this grand jury report. You spoke with the grand jury. Why was it so important to you to share your story with them?
It was like, for the first time in your life, you're being heard by somebody who actually cares about what happened to you. You know, we have reached out to the diocese before, and they didn't really want to hear anything. They didn't want to listen, and the last thing they wanted you to do was contact law enforcement. So for the first time in your life, you actually have 23 grand jurors listening to you intently and caring about what you're saying. And it's part of that validation and being vindicated that, hey, the truth is finally going to come out.
There has been so much reaction to this report. It is also very difficult to read, as folks know, if they have even tried to read a small part of it. How has that reaction been for you to be on the receiving end in some ways of that reaction?
Well, you know, first of all, people should be outraged about what they read. We're talking about years and years, really decades, of systematic cover-up. The real scandal is not that even the abuse happened, it's that the bishops aided and abetted these known perpetrators. It's the bishops who chose to protect the church's reputation and their assets rather than protect their own children. And that in and of itself is despicable. So people should be outraged. But you know what? Victims, it's a great day for victims because finally, collectively, our voices are being heard, finally. And I always said this is a two-part system. Mm-hmm. First part is getting the truth out. Then we're going to turn to justice. We're going to turn to passing legislation to give these victims in this report their day in court.
And so part of what you're trying to do with that is your bill, which is called The Real Deal. It would eliminate the criminal and civil statutes of limitations, as we pointed out, for childhood sexual assault claims. The Pennsylvania Catholic Conference has said that they contend that memories fade, perpetrators die. They raise concerns about bankruptcy in relation to this. And they've said that really the time to discuss legislation will come later. But on the heels of this grand jury report, the focus should be on helping survivors and families recover. Your thoughts?
Sure. Let's kick the can down the road. That's what the bishops have done for over 100 years with child sex abuse. That's not going to happen anymore. When we go back into session in September, we will be passing a bill out of the House of Representatives that will eliminate the criminal statute of limitations, that will make a change to the civil statute of limitations, and absolutely will have some type of window, hopefully a 2-year window, that will give past victims their opportunity to get their 2 years back. I don't want to hear that, you know, the church is going to have to file for bankruptcy. And when they usually do, it's voluntary bankruptcy. They put certain assets aside so they can continue their spiritual education and ministerial services, and they make sure their pension is funded, of course, even for these predator priests. But that's too bad. They have committed these crimes. And we're tired of hearing the bishop saying, well, we're learning from this report. We're going to try to make changes going forward. How about you be accountable for your actions? That's what the nuns taught me in grade school, that when you commit something, you do something wrong, you are held accountable. And that's what this legislation will do, finally, to the church.
Do you have support from Republicans on this?
I do. And in fact, I'm almost going to pass the same bill that passed out of the House 2 years ago, 180-15, before the Senate decided to go on a different path. So one thing I want to make sure, I want all victims out there to hear this, though, is that my legislation isn't just focused on the Catholic clergy. It's for all victims of child sex abuse. But it's because what the Catholic Conference is doing, spending millions of dollars with lawyers and lobbyists, they're going to block justice for all victims here.
Is the Catholic lobby too powerful?
Oh, absolutely. The last time my bill passed the House 180-15 and went to the Senate, the Catholic Conference hired 39 lobbyists to work 50 senators. How can victims compete with a church that is spending millions of dollars to silence us? And you've seen it in the grand jury report. They did everything they could to make sure this report didn't come out. And again, it's the
Those-
collective voice of these victims
Those-
and our Attorney General, who really empaneled this grand jury, who was amazing through this whole process.
Those numbers are astounding when you put it out there like that. How much of an impact do you think then this grand jury report, the voices of these victims and survivors, is there enough there to counter that powerful lobby that you just laid out?
There is. I mean, the one thing that's critical here is the media, and from what I heard from legislators already, the newspapers, the TV, they're reaching out to representatives and senators in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania saying, where do you stand on the recommendations from this grand jury? We want to print your responses, or we want to put you on TV, and we want to hear you say, are you standing with victims, or are you going to stand with pedophiles or the institutions that have protected these pedophiles? The one thing that we definitely don't want to see is any legislator aiding and abetting a bishop now to continue the cover-up that has gone on for decades.
I do want to point out we have invited the church on. They have not responded to that request to join us. There is, as we know, no comment from the Vatican. The Pope has not weighed in. The Pope, as recently as yesterday afternoon, according to a spokesperson for the Attorney General, has not responded to the Attorney General's letter from earlier this month. We will continue to stay on it, and we hope you'll keep us updated as well. It is something that will absolutely stay in the headlines here for us. Thank you.